Okay, great. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice break. Welcome to the regular City of Bellevue Council meeting for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Mayor Robinson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse?
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Robertson?
I'm here.
Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn?
Here.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Please say Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have two proclamations tonight. The first one is National Recovery Month proclamation. Councilmember Barksdale, will you read that, please?
Happy to. Thank you, Mayor. Whereas behavioral health is an essential part of our overall wellness, and whereas preventing, managing, or overcoming mental health and/or substance use disorders is essential to achieving a healthy lifestyle, both physically and emotionally. And whereas an estimated 400,000 people in King County are affected by related conditions, and whereas as a community, we must encourage each other to take preventative measures when possible, recognize when help is needed, and guide people we know with mental health and/or substance use disorders to the appropriate resources and providers. And whereas to help more people achieve and sustain long-term recovery, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, King County, and the City of Bellevue invite all residents of Bellevue to participate in National Recovery Month. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2021 as National Recovery Month in Bellevue and call upon the people of Bellevue to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies to support this year's theme, Rising Above It All, Wellness, Resilience, and Recovery.
Great, thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse, would you please read the next proclamation on 9/11?
Happy to, Mayor, thank you. Whereas 20 years ago, our nation watched in horror as 4 commercial airliners were hijacked and directed towards major American institutions, including the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. And whereas in the aftermath of one of the worst terrorist attacks in our history, many public servants rose to the occasion as our military, law enforcement officers, firefighters, first responders, and other emergency personnel showed true heroism and selfless courage for the safety of others. And whereas the emotions surrounding this key event in our history and its impacts are complex and far-reaching, and whereas we should pay tribute to the lives lost with service and charity towards others and ensure that our community, state, and nation are just and inclusive places for all. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of Bellevue, Washington, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize September 11th, 2021 as the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in Bellevue and urge Bellevue residents to give meaning to the phrase, never forget, to mourn those that we lost and to continue to support our community's first responders and those who work hard to defend our country every day. Signed, Lynn Robinson, Mayor, City of Bellevue.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral communications?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This evening, there are 2 speakers pre-registered for oral communications. And with that, I will call the first speaker, who is Lisa Young. Miss Young, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you. Are you hearing me?
Yes, thank you. Your time begins now.
Thank you. Lisa Young, South Bellevue residents, and I wanted to address the City Council on the agenda matter regarding the homeless initiatives that you have planned. and understand what your initiatives are and your plans for the South Bellevue increase in homelessness. We have seen an increase on Southeast 41st Street of residents living in their RVs. And for years, regardless, this road has not been wide enough for large vehicles to park, and you cannot safely pass large vehicles coming in opposite the lane. And previously, complaints were of those of the semi-trucks. Once you pass the vehicles, you risk having a head-on collision with those coming to the opposite lane. And if you've ever tried to pass a Metro bus on that road, you have to stop at the other end to allow them passage. So regardless of the residents in their trailers that are parked on the sidewalk and curb to avoid their vehicles hanging over into the traffic lane, we need to do something about the width of that road. Additionally, I want to address the homelessness camps and tents that are popping up in large amounts at the I-90 and 150th exit, and the King County Trail that is being developed above the Newport Shores neighborhood has tents all up and down all portions, whether opened or unopened at this point. I was walking my dog the other day, and I can no longer safely use this trail. While walking my dog, an individual climbed out of the bushes from his tent, and it scared my dog, who started barking at him, of which he then started waving a stick at myself and my dog. And then the aggressive panhandlers that are in the parking lot at the QFC and when you walk into the market. The other day, while in the Safeway in the Eastgate area, I noticed an individual with a fifth of vodka pulling out massive amounts of change, trying to put them in the machine. And when he came up 10 cents short, he started screaming and kicking the machine. Another patron handed him $1 so that he could finish his transaction in order to get him out of the store and safely away from his child. I understand that there is the problem of what we do with this, but I need to know what Bellevue City Council's plans are so that we don't jeopardize citizen safeties, and that what we plan to do to assure that Bellevue doesn't become a Seattle at this point. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Young. The next speaker on the list is Ron Hoffalina. And Mr. Hoffalina, I do not see you connected by name. If you are connected under a different name, can you please use *9 or the raised hand function? Okay, I do not see Mr. Hoffalina raising his hand. At this point, I would ask if there is anyone else connected to this meeting who would like to make oral communication to the council. Please use the raise hand function or *9 if connected with a phone. And I do see one speaker, and that is Heidi Dean. Ms. Dean, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Your time begins now.
Thanks so much. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Today, Pam Johnston of Bridal Trails alerted me to ordinance number 6597, which reallocates leftover park funds from Surrey Downs Park and the Downtown Park Northeast Gateway project. Had Pam not contacted me, I'd be in the dark about this. As Newport Hills Community Club president and a member of our longstanding park committee, I expected that I would have been made aware of this. Unfortunately, I've not heard anything from our park planner since April. On the one hand, I was thrilled to learn that my neighborhood's park project would receive additional funds. On the other hand, it has become abundantly clear the reason our park project requires those reallocated funds is because so much of the original CIP funding went to park features meant to benefit the users of the planned community park size off-leash area. It's oversized and everybody knows it. I would ask that if you pass this ordinance, that you include stipulations to downsize the number of planned parking spaces. The last communication that I received from our park planner, Mr. Vanderheiden, indicated that parking studies showed a need for 18 to 21 parking spaces. That is not a neighborhood park. Our own parks department and the definition of neighborhood park, which several of you, well, actually almost all of you, reiterated that this is a neighborhood park during the naming discussion, indicates that very little, if any, parking is needed at neighborhood parks. So my question is, I've never seen a parking study. Have you? Has the park board? Nobody's seen a parking study. What did they study? Who did they check to see where these people are coming from? Because you and I both know they're coming from Newcastle, Renton, and other cities. So I really would like for you to make sure that this is a neighborhood park. I appreciate additional funding, and I would ask that you make sure that that additional funding goes to things that will benefit my neighborhood, not people coming in from outside the neighborhood. We needed a gathering space and we had to give that up. We've been waiting for 11 years for this. You asked us to wait patiently and we did. But it's getting really, really frustrating being told the same lies over and over again by our parks department and our planners. And I never have heard from Mr. Shiosaki ever. So please consider that. A neighborhood park does not require 18 to 21 parking spaces. And also, how can you make sure that when we do have neighborhood gatherings, that our own neighborhood people can use that, or in the evenings or weekends when they want to go and use the public gathering space. During the planning sessions, some of the staff and the park commissioners suggested being able to roll a fence back so that we could use the off-leash area when we had gatherings. I'm not sure if that was ever made it into that, but we were promised that we would be able to use that off-leash area when we had neighborhood gatherings.
Your time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this point, I would ask again, is there anyone who would like to make oral communication to the council? Please use the raise hand function. And Mayor, I do not see any additional hands. That would close oral communications.
All right, thank you very much. So we're on to council business and new initiatives. And Councilmember Robertson, I believe you have a recommendation to make to the Transportation Commission.
I do. We had an opening pop up on our Transportation Commission. And so we did the usual advertising for it. We got 4 applications and we did interviews with me and our staff member and the Director of Transportation. And I would like to appoint Brad Helland. A little bit about Brad. This is a partial term that will expire in 2024, position number 5. Brad previously served 2.5 terms on the Environmental Services Commission, including chairing it. He's been off for 6 years. He's an engineer, and our Transportation Commission has a relatively young group, young in terms of duration of service of transportation commissioners. So I think Brad, as someone who's served on a commission for many years, will bring a lot to the position of transportation commissioner. So I would move appointment of Brad Helland to position number 5, serving a partial term expiring May 31st, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. Passes. Congratulations to Brad Helland. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we have 3 study session items. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce the first one?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and council members. There are, as you mentioned, 3 items. The first one is an update to the sections of the Business and Occupation, also known as B&O tax code, for purposes of providing more clarity to businesses. Just by background, tonight's staff proposes a few technical and administrative updates to the business and the B&O tax code. These updates, as I mentioned, will help provide greater clarity for businesses. We have, and tonight staff is seeking direction to return at an upcoming consent calendar with appropriate legislation to amend the code accordingly. Joining us this evening is Tony Call, our finance and administrative managers today, to provide an overview of some of the provisions in the code. With that, I'll go ahead and turn over to Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. As always, it's a pleasure to be back here with you this evening. As City Manager Miyake mentioned, we do have a series of administrative B&O tax code changes for you this evening, and we are seeking direction to return on an upcoming consent calendar with appropriate legislation to implement. Our agenda this evening is fairly short. I have 1 slide on a little background on just what B&O taxes are at the City of Bellevue. I have a couple of slides describing the proposed updates. I have a final slide discussing our outreach that we did, and then we'll turn it back to all of you for direction. This is a bit of background on business and occupation tax here at the City of Bellevue. We have two taxes of business and occupation tax here at the City of Bellevue. The first is a gross receipts tax. Of our total $40 million that we receive annually from business and occupation tax, 36 million or 90% of it comes from gross receipts tax. That gross receipts tax is governed and complies with the state model ordinance. The state does update that model ordinance on a fairly regular basis. And when that does happen, we then in turn adopt that model ordinance here at the City of Bellevue. The last time we did that was in 2019 for the 2020 tax year. We have a second B&O tax component, which is the square footage tax. It was implemented in 1977. And since the gross receipts tax is worth 90% of what we collect each year, the square footage tax is about 10% or $4 million a year. Both are regularly updated, and the last major update for the square footage tax occurred in 2012. And at that same time in 2012, the council did adopt a set of B&O tax guiding principles. I've truncated them here on the slide for PowerPoint friendly. I will read them to you so that you can have all the words that attach to those brief statements out there. So the four guiding principles are to maintain a taxpayer friendly environment at the City of Bellevue that is sensitive to the needs of our resident businesses and competitive in the local environment. To simplify the Bellevue tax code in order to make compliance with Bellevue tax law easier. To simplify the administration of the city's tax, to minimize costs associated with the tax administration. And finally, to gain consistency with other taxing jurisdictions where possible. The brief and not too lengthy code updates we have for you this evening fall into the second and third bullets, both to simplify the tax code and to simplify the administration of the tax code. So heading into an overview of the proposed changes, we have two sets of changes. The first set goes back to the 2012 update. During that time, council gave clear direction to edit the code to acknowledge digital goods. In application of that code update, we did not carry the concept of digital goods throughout the code in a consistent manner. And over the years, businesses have asserted some confusion with regard to consistency with these changes across the city code. So before you this evening is a couple of code changes we are proposing. There are three sections within the code. And if you want to look at the specific code language, you can see them in attachment A to your packet. There's a red line version with comments attached to each that you can see if that is of interest. So the code update will begin to note that digital goods clearly in those sections. It will also ensure that we maintain consistency with the model ordinance, which is a state requirement. It's really important to note that there is no change with these updates to tax rates, taxing approach, or our taxing guiding principles. And this work completely aligns with our longstanding practices throughout the code. We have three other small edits for you. And when it comes to the code update this time, the first is we have a Scrivener's error. We have a missing date in the model ordinance. So this would take care of that missing date. The second item is we have an RCW that prohibits city from taxing insurance producer. So the update to the code would be in alignment with that RCW to prohibit cities from taxing insurance producers. And then finally, we have a titling inconsistency with what is actually in the body of the language of the code. And that last one would also just connect those two pieces. So again, a series of truly administrative technical updates to the B&O tax code. Our outreach, we did outreach to businesses. We posted on the city's tax site on August 13th. It closed on August 31st. We had approximately 1,400 email notifications go up. In my look at that long laundry list of 1,400 email notifications, there's quite a few tax accountants and tax attorneys, those folks that would be interested in a tax update. We did receive one response noting a grammatical error in our posting, which we promptly corrected. And other than that, we received no other comments. So with that this evening, we are seeking direction to come back on a consent calendar with the legislation needed to make the changes noted, creating clear pathway to digital goods in our code as directed under our 2012 update, and then correcting the three smaller, more administrative errors. So thank you for your time. And with that, Mayor, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Great presentation. So to reiterate what you said, there are no changes to the tax rates or the tax schedules. And you say these are administrative changes, you're correcting Scrivener's errors, and you're making clarifications for business owners. Is that accurate?
That is an accurate statement. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from anybody? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Great, clear, simple presentation. Just one question about the insurance producers. Since they may have been paying taxes before, what do you do with those folks that paid? Do you make up for it, or what's? Yeah.
Well, administratively, if they send it in, we turn around and refund them back. So that is a bit of churn on an administrative process. So to have our code clearer would prevent them from filing to begin with. So we are refunding.
Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Actually, all good with the B&O tax code updates or changes there. I guess I had a question generally. The guiding principles, especially the second, third, and fourth, could apply to the entire code if you took out tax. Do we have any guiding principles for all of our code? And I asked this in part because I know that we've had feedback about our land use code.
Councilmember Barstow, it's a very good question. I don't know that off the top of my head. I would have to go back and do some research for you. I'd have to talk to the city attorney's office on that question. I can get back to you on that. But I know our tax code does have a set of guiding principles.
Yeah, I think it would be, I'd be interested. I don't know if any other council members are in exploring having guiding principles for the code, the rest of the code. Thank you.
Councilmember Robertson.
Thanks. I'm wondering, Tony, are the guiding principles in the code, were those part of the model ordinance?
They were not. They were actually work, and this is a little bit before my time, Councilmember Robertson, so it's a bit of storytelling on my part. It definitely was part of your packet materials back in 2012. And when I watched your tape, you did acknowledge that those were the guiding principles for the tax code that we as staff were to work with. So I do not believe they're part of the model ordinance. I do believe they were part of your discussion back in 2012.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I thought that they might have come down from the state. I'm just really pleased that that the finance department and city staff are responsive when they're finding confusion in the code and bringing a cleanup. I want to just praise the department for that. I really, really appreciate it. Would love to, there's so many other sections of the code, including the land use code, as mentioned by Councilmember Barksdale, that we are having trouble getting to do some of the cleanup and updating. So just want to call it out as a good job done, and I'm happy to see this back on consent. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Mr. Miyake, would you like to respond to Councilmember Barksdale's request about looking at the principles of other codes, the land use codes?
Mayor, I think Tony actually answered the question quite right in terms of, I'd have to go back and do a little research. Generally, we do like to use principles as we do any kind of code updates, but that's something that I'd have to go back and research.
Okay, so is there a motion?
I move to direct staff to draft legislation for consideration on a future consent calendar, amending the City of Bellevue's B&O tax code by adopting the proposed changes to BCC 4.09.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All right, what's the next one, Mr. Miyake?
Well, the next topic is our Homeless Outreach Program update. And just by way of background, the Homelessness Outreach Program was initiated back in September of 2019 to provide a one city approach towards addressing and responding to the needs of individuals experiencing homelessness and housing instability in Bellevue. Tonight's study session is an informational update to highlight the city's Homelessness Outreach Program, coordination, successes, and ongoing challenges that the city faces in addressing and preventing homelessness. Joining us this evening is our Stephanie Martinez, our Homeless Outreach Coordinator, as well as Kate Barnes, Deputy City Manager. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the team.
There we go. Muting.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys. All right, so Stephanie Martinez here, the Homelessness Outreach Coordinator for the city, and I'm here with Deputy City Manager Kate Behrens just to provide a Homelessness Outreach Program update. Tonight is going to be an information only session. No action is sought from council for tonight. As part of the agenda tonight, I wanted to give you a high-level overview of what I'll be discussing with you all tonight. So tonight I'm going to be looking and talking to you all about what homelessness looks like in Bellevue, what our citywide homelessness efforts are to addressing and preventing homelessness, do a little bit of a deeper dive into what the Homelessness Outreach Program is, highlight some success stories, some ongoing challenges, and upcoming projects that the city has in addressing and responding to homelessness. So for this slide, I just wanted to review with you all tonight what homelessness does look like in Bellevue and what the different approaches are to addressing homelessness. Here in this first photo, this is what an encampment looks like in Bellevue, where folks are living unsheltered or unhoused, living outside, and the reasons for this just vary by person and situation and circumstance that has led to their housing instability. Folks may know that we also have hosted or permitted tent cities as well. And this is a picture of Camp Unity, who often moves throughout the east side to provide an opportunity for folks to stabilize and have a place to go temporarily while they're working on their barriers towards permanent housing. I also wanted to highlight tonight how domestic violence is one of the leading causes of homelessness for women and children in King County. And here we have a picture of folks that are living in their vehicles here in Bellevue as well. Myself, other city staff, other community-based outreach workers, Bellevue Police are really engaged with folks, whether they're living outside or in their vehicles, to help them move into temporary or permanent housing and figure out what those housing barriers are so we can get folks off the street, whether again it's an encampment or in a vehicle, and get them inside. And lastly, I did want to provide a picture here of affordable housing, because affordable housing is one of the solutions to homelessness and addressing the root causes of homelessness, whether it be providing that deeper affordable housing for folks that are living on fixed incomes possibly, or others. It could look like, permanent supportive housing or housing with supportive services. But affordable housing can really help folks exit homelessness into housing as well. So I won't do too much of a deep dive into the root causes of homelessness, but I did want to just highlight the spectrum of challenges that folks face and some of the real root causes of homelessness. So here we have the lack of affordable housing and deep affordable housing for the 0 to 30% folks between the 0 to 30% AMI, rising rents. We also have lack of living wages. Oftentimes, again, domestic violence is one of the leading causes of homelessness for women and children in King County. We also have inadequate discharging from jails, prisons, hospitals, where they often don't have a home to go to after they are discharged from our systems. And over the next couple of slides, I just wanted to highlight some data for you all tonight. Here, I'm highlighting the 2020 point in time count data, which we often use to talk about the magnitude of the issue. This count usually happens in January of every year. This year, in 2021, the point in time count wasn't conducted due to COVID-19. But you'll see here the Seattle King County numbers. We have 11,751 folks that were experiencing homelessness throughout our region. As part of the East Side numbers, Bellevue is counted in that East Side number along our East Side city partners as Issaquah, Kirkland, and Redmond, and so on. And we have 1,032 folks experiencing homelessness across the East Side. Bellevue School District has also reported 375 school-aged youth that are attending the Bellevue School District School in the 2020 to 21 school year. And this number is really fluid as it changes year to year. And so we continue to work with Bellevue School District staff to see what those numbers are and to see how we can work together to address and respond to the needs of our homeless youth in the Bellevue School District. And this table really highlights how homelessness disproportionately impacts people of color. So as an example here, you will see on their far right column, the 2020 King County demographic data. And as an example, Black or African American folks make up 7% of the King County population, but in the 2020 point in time count, they made up 25% of the homelessness population. Right below that, you'll see that American Indians or Alaskan Natives make up 1% of our King County demographic data, but were disproportionately represented in our homelessness population and made up 15% of the homelessness population in our region. And here I'm going to move towards a discussion around what our citywide efforts are towards addressing and responding to homelessness. And I sort of wanted to bucket them for you tonight. In this first sort of bucket, the city really does invest in facilities such as shelters, transitional housing, and affordable housing that really addresses the root causes of homelessness as well, such as building affordable housing. Homelessness, there is no one-size-fits-all solution, and it really is a local, national, and regional issue. So by the city investing in a spectrum of services, we are actually able to address all of the spectrum of challenges and unique situations that folks living outside or unstably housed actually experience. So again, with this first bucket, the city really does invest in shelters, transitional housing, affordable housing. And the second bucket, I wanted to talk a little bit about the compassionate enforcement that we have and sort of the balanced approach that the city takes in addressing and responding to homelessness related issues. Here, the city really does enforce our city codes, and that may look like unlawful camping or 24-hour parking and what have you. And all of that is balanced with ensuring that we connect folks to myself or other outreach providers or other providers in our area that provide supportive services such as behavioral health services, ongoing case management, housing navigation services as well, to ensure that folks are also getting into housing and addressing their housing barriers. And this last sort of bucket that we have is around the city's investment in services. So we do fund organizations for supportive services like the services I just gave examples for. But the city also has programs internally, such as the Homelessness Outreach program, as well as the Bellevue Fire Cares program that often respond to our unhoused community as well, that are in mental health crises. And we work closely with the Bellevue Police Department as well to ensure that we are engaging with folks that may be in crisis and that we are connecting them to supportive services such as behavioral health services and any other services that the individual might need to help them move into housing. And over the next few slides, I'm going to sort of do a deep dive into what the Homelessness Outreach Program is. So here are some high-level buckets that I'm going to be talking with you all tonight around direct service and outreach, internal and external coordination, projects and new opportunities, regional coordination, and community engagement. And so for this first one, as part of my role and as part of this program, I provide direct service and outreach to our unhoused community in Bellevue. And it's important to meet people where they're at and provide options and access to supportive services that address their barriers. My goal in doing this work, and I put this picture here just so I can provide you with a sort of boots on the ground example of what this work encompasses, is my whole goal is to reduce those housing barriers, help folks access services, and work with them to immediately get folks housed. So just as an example, if I'm coming to a new encampment or folks that I do not know that have been living unhoused in Bellevue, I'll usually be accompanied by our Bellevue Fire Cares team or Bellevue Police to provide standby and support as well in sort of a new situation. I go out there and meet with individuals, ask folks what they've been experiencing, how long they've been homeless for, what's worked for them services wise and what hasn't worked for them so that we don't duplicate unsuccessful efforts on their part. So again, my goal is to provide options, not opinions, and that means listening and identifying what their biggest barriers are to ensure that I'm helping folks move into housing. And just very specific examples, that might look like bringing my laptop out there, having 2 phones on, and just helping folks obtain necessary documentation so that they can apply for housing, you know, applying for or replacing their lost IDs, applying for financial assistance or various housing programs, connecting them to transitional housing programs. And again, there's really no one size fits all solution, and each case is different. So my job is to figure out what those array of options could be for that unique individual. And here I wanted to highlight the internal and external coordination involved in this role as well. So internally, as we all know, homelessness really does interface impact several different city departments. And that could be parks, utilities, transportation, the police department, the fire department. Every department that you can really think of, homelessness interfaces with. And we really do provide a citywide approach, and we work together collaboratively to address all of the homelessness related issues that we might have. Parks might call me to provide more outreach services at a park that's been frequented by folks living outside. I might get a call from, you know, our transportation staff saying, hey, we need to provide more outreach services, and we need to figure out how to maintain our streets and right of ways for this particular street. And my role is to figure out all that coordination. And then externally as well, I had mentioned connecting folks to accessing supportive services in our community-based agencies. So that might be connecting folks to the VA, Veterans Affairs, or DSHS, behavioral health services, you know, again, connecting them to purchase their IDs. Those are just quick examples, but in my role as well, we also coordinate with other entities such as King County or Washington State Department of Transportation, who own land throughout Bellevue in which folks are residing on. So oftentimes WashDOT or King County will call me so that I'm able to provide outreach services, and the city, including myself and Bellevue Police, will work with them to not only provide standby and outreach, but to ensure that we're also addressing those public health issues that are involved in terms of any cleanup of abandoned waste or debris that might be on their properties as well. And as part of this role too, and as part of this program, we really need to continue with new projects and new opportunities, because there is no one size fits all solution. We really do need to invest in a spectrum of programs to meet the spectrum of challenges that folks actually face when they're housing unstable or they're experiencing homelessness. And just as a quick example, the city does invest, as just an example, a new opportunity that the city took upon itself is to implement or impose a sales tax, a 1/10 sales tax that goes towards affordable housing, behavioral health services, and housing related services. Now this funding, depending on which side of the house the funding's on, whether it be on the capital or services side, can actually support a lot of individuals that are unstably housed in Bellevue or experiencing homelessness. And that really advances the city's efforts to address and prevent homelessness. And here I'm going to talk a little bit about our regional coordination. So prior to this program that was initiated in 2019, the Homelessness Outreach Program, the city has a longstanding history of collaborating with other Eastside cities to use human service dollars to fund shelters across the Eastside and other supportive services. But within my role, I do coordinate with, as an example, the homelessness administrator and coordinator with the city of Redmond. Oftentimes we have mutual participants of our program that are very mobile and may move from Bellevue to Redmond. So we often coordinate to ensure that we're not duplicating efforts and that we are providing wraparound services to these individuals. And also the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, City of Bellevue staff are continuing to coordinate with them. For folks who don't know, in 2019, King County and the City of Seattle signed an interlocal agreement to establish KCRHA as a separate governmental agency. Their mission is really to significantly decrease the incidence of homelessness throughout King County. Currently, KCRHA staff are developing a 5-year regional homelessness plan, as well as developing sort of sub-regional snapshots. And currently, city staff are working with KCRHA staff on what the East Side's sub-regional snapshot looks like. So they're in the sort of data gathering information gathering stage, and we are in coordination with other East Side cities and other community-based partnerships to ensure that KCRHA knows what's happening in Bellevue and across the East Side, what the needs are. We're sharing our expertise and coordinating again with our traditional partners to share this information with KCRHA. And also as part of this role is community engagement. So part of this role is responding to community inquiries or concerns that are related to homelessness, whether it is requesting for more support at a certain park, whether it's to address an encampment throughout the city. Part of my role is to really engage with the community, let them know our protocols and processes to respond to homelessness related issues throughout the city. And here I did want to provide a couple of successes. For this slide too, I wanted to talk a little bit about what our efforts have been to advance that communication to the city around what our plan is and what, how the city responds to homelessness. So we did recently include a new request type in the My Bellevue app for homelessness assistance and support. So folks can now go in there and request support again, either for frequented areas that they've been noticing folks hanging out at, or particular encampments, or just noting that, they see an individual often in their neighborhood and they want more outreach and support to that individual and for that individual to be engaged. So folks can go in there and sort of request for homelessness assistance and support through My Bellevue. We've also we are continuing to update our website with the most relevant information regarding the city's homelessness efforts and our processes and protocols. So that has most recently been updated as well. And we've also released a recent Lake to Lake video highlighting a success story as well, and also just highlighting the amount of coordination that it takes citywide to address homelessness. So folks should check that out as well. And here's where I really want to talk about some housing success stories and all the coordination that it really takes to get folks inside. So I have a couple of snapshot pictures, and I won't go through everything, but I do coordinate with the Sophia Way Congregation for the Homeless, which are shelter providers here in Bellevue for women and single men. And ICRON is also a good mental health and behavioral health provider here on the East Side as well that I refer folks to. But the sort of top left picture, I'm going to sort of share a story about an individual that had been frequenting near our freeways with severe mental health issues, in which Bellevue Fire Cares, myself, and Bellevue Police were often getting calls for support and service to help this individual obtain housing and figure out what his needs are. And for here, what had happened was Bellevue Police had really built a really good rapport with this individual, as well as Bellevue Fire Cares. They had let me know that this individual is unhoused, gave me a snapshot picture of what his mental health issues were. And so from there on, it was my sort of job to run out into the community and figure out which agency had housing openings, and more immediately. Instead of him being on a wait list for several years, I wanted to figure out if we can get him inside so that he can really address his behavioral health issues and his mental health issues. And so luckily we found Hops in Place that had just opened up in the Seattle area. And they have a partnership with Harborview Medical that really supports folks that have been chronically homeless. And he had been chronically homeless, I believe, for about 5 years already in the Bellevue area. And then they have a partnership with psychiatric staff and medical staff, which is really important for him to maintain housing. So we got him into housing, took a few weeks to figure that out. And it was, outside of the normal system to get him inside and get him housed immediately. So that was very exciting, and it really took a coordinated effort across all different departments. And then this other picture to the right is sort of a snapshot picture of Veterans Affairs in Renton. And I've housed 3 veterans so far with coordination with the VA. So the VA actually received additional funding during COVID-19 to get our veterans off the streets and immediately placed into hotels, which has been great because it's been a temporary option for them to get them into a hotel and then figure out transitional and permanent housing options. Those 3 individuals were put into hotel at first, and then I worked with that case management to figure out the long-term housing placement, whether it's transitional housing for a 2-year period or permanent housing. Happy to say, figuring out documentations with these individuals, coordinating with their new VA case manager, all 3 individuals have now moved from hotel into permanent housing, which has been really exciting as well. So just wanted to highlight all of the different coordination it takes and all the different entities that can be involved to getting one person inside. And here are some data points around just how many folks that we've been able to permanently or temporarily house. So in 2020, we had 29 people move into housing, which has been great. So far in 2021, I've helped house 18 folks into permanent and temporary housing. And for this slide, I wanted to review some continued gaps and challenges. So for this first one, there have been limited places for individuals to stabilize until they can access permanent housing. And I had mentioned before tonight a little bit about safe parking programs as just an example. So currently in the Bellevue area, we do not have safe parking programs formalized or any sort of process of where we know where the safe parking is located. We do have safe parking throughout the east side in Redmond and Kirkland as well. So safe parking can provide a temporary space for somebody to stabilize, get off the street, get into a safe parking area and connect with case managers at that site so that they're able to address their housing barriers as they move to access, permanent housing. So we continue to find that as a gap here in Bellevue. For the next point, proactive versus reactive homelessness response. I like to talk about this a little bit because just generally speaking, I know that, Bellevue itself and a lot of city staff, including Bellevue Police, the Fire Cares team and myself and other city staff too, we're really good at addressing crisis, right? Getting out there, responding to concerns or inquiries regarding homelessness related issues, whether it's encampments or we might have somebody experiencing a mental health crisis on right of way. So we get out there, respond, engage with the individual, figure out what the next step is in their housing stability plan. And we need to continue to invest in our proactive responses. Luckily, that being, just as an example, investing in affordable housing and deep affordable housing. When we're addressing the root causes of homelessness, we are proactively preventing homelessness. And that's what I mean by proactive homelessness response. And the city does continue to invest in, again, the spectrum of sort of programs and services that we have, but we need to continue to invest in that preventative response to homelessness that address some of those root causes I talked about earlier in my slides as well. And lastly, there's limited permanent housing with supportive services for extremely low income clients. Just as an example, I have several clients, whether they're living in vehicles or outside, who have a fixed income from Social Security or Social Security disability. They get paid about $795 to $1,100 a month, more so $795 a month. And so it's extremely hard to get folks into market value rent. You have to really think outside the box, whether it's helping folks apply to more of a shared living situation, a roommate situation, which oftentimes folks just want peace of mind and their own space. So there's very limited, extremely low income housing across the east side, and specifically in Bellevue. I did want to highlight some numbers that I got as well from our City of Bellevue staff that work on affordable housing. So we do have 335 regulated units in the 0 to 30% AMI range. But in 2017, we found and know that 5,670 households in Bellevue are within the income range of 0 to 30%. So that just shows you the gap and the need for more housing and investments in the 0 to 30% AMI range. And lastly, here are some upcoming projects that I wanted to share with you tonight that sort of help address some of these challenges. So we are continuing to enhance our communication regarding our city's efforts to address homelessness. whether it be through social media and it's your city. We will continue to also update the website with new information, as well as the continued HB 1590 program adoption and implementation. For folks who don't know, HB 1590 revenue was put in place so that we can actually use that funding towards affordable housing, behavioral health services, and housing related services. It does serve a whole list of eligible populations such as veterans, senior citizens, folks with disabilities, but it also does serve persons experiencing homelessness. So that's really exciting about the program, that it really does serve a wide, sort of wide array of populations that are often underserved, and part of that being folks experiencing homelessness. And lastly, we are also exploring safe parking programs. So council has also directed myself and staff to prioritize what safe parking programs could look like in Bellevue, which is exciting because again, it can provide a temporary relief for folks that are living outside in their vehicles, and can provide like one-stop shop for folks to reside in, know that they're safe in the parking lot, and then connect with case managers there as well. And again, this was an information only study session, just providing you all with an update, and no action is sought tonight.
Thank you very much. That's a great presentation, and thank you for all the work that you do. You have one of the hardest jobs, I think, in the city, and you do it awfully well, and we really appreciate it. I'm going to call on council members in this order. Councilmember Barksdale, Robertson, Zahn, Deputy Mayor Newenhouse, Councilmember Stokes, Lee, and then myself. So Councilmember Barksdale, any comments or questions?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Just want to say thank you, Stephanie, and for all the work that you're doing. I've had a chance to see you in Bellevue Police and Bellevue Fire Cares in action a couple times, and really appreciate the way that you all really worked with people experiencing homelessness in our community. In terms of the King County Regional Homeless Authority, do you have an idea? And I know that we're planning a time for them to visit. Just wanted to get an idea of when we're looking for that to happen. And then the second question or comment around the enhanced communication. I'm really interested. We see the emails that come in and the comments, and I really appreciate an opportunity for us to explore ways to connect our unhoused neighbors with our housed neighbors to bring a bit more of that empathy and context around homelessness. And so I don't know if there's an opportunity to explore that, but that's something that I think would be helpful.
Yeah. Councilmember Barksdale, I'll jump in on the King County Regional Homelessness Authority question. We are working with intergovernmental staff now, hoping to land it on one of those upcoming regional issues agendas. So got to work with the capacity, with whatever else needs to come to the council on that, and the KCRHA staff availability. But hopefully, if not this month's regional issues agenda, then by October, we would see that. And in the meantime, we continue at the staff level and with our providers, as Stephanie talked about, trying to collaborate amongst ourselves to get the information to KCRHA staff as they sort of build out a picture of what's happening on the ground on the east side right now as part of what they're doing. So we are continuing to try to get that data and information to them, make sure that it's the full picture, that it's accurate as they then build it into what they're doing. And then on the proactive communication standpoint, I'll leave Stephanie to add a little bit, but that is very top of mind for us each time we think about responding to inquiries or providing information about the program, is to lead with the humanity of it and to always try to find ways to help people understand where they can get involved if they want to help. So continued feedback on how we can find more opportunities for that, we're very open to.
Councilmember Richardson.
Thanks. Great presentation. Thank you, Stephanie, for all you do and have been doing for the people of Bellevue. So we got some metrics with regard to the populations on the east side who maybe experienced homelessness and living among us, whether in their cars or in tents or someplace else. So one thing we didn't get metrics on is how many people are living outside in Bellevue. And I think that, I know that it's hard to count during COVID, but I would be curious to know how many different reports we get, because I know that there's people that write to council that post on the My Bellevue app. I see them on Nextdoor about where people are living outside. And the person that spoke earlier tonight, I haven't been down to the trail that was mentioned, but I am very disturbed if we have a trail that is meant for open public use that is filled with tent encampments. It's not something I was aware of. I'd like to understand the magnitude and how, because if we don't understand the magnitude of the problem, we can't figure out how to solve it. And one of the things that you mentioned was the root causes of homelessness. You didn't mention drug addiction or alcohol addiction or mental illness, yet in your example, you cited to a person who was mentally ill. And my understanding is that a lot of the service resistant population is folks who have a high percentage of one or all of those problems. And so if we don't understand what the problems are and we fail to actually include that as a category, it's pretty hard to solve it. So could you, and to appropriate the right amount of money on the 1590 money, I'm really wanting to see some of that money go towards behavioral health and making sure that we can help these folks. Anyway, so I guess I'd like you to speak about that. And then, because the last thing we want to have is people not getting the services they need, but we also don't want to have shared public facilities like a trail being unusable to the public because they're afraid, or it's not, or there's obstructions in the walkways, etc. So can you address these issues?
Yeah, so I'll start with your second piece on the mental and behavioral health services. I did have the icon and I think I skipped over it accidentally. So yes, mental and behavioral health services is one of the causes of homelessness, and it can also be a byproduct of living outside and experiencing homelessness and housing instability. Fortunately enough, so as of this year, council has directed to prioritize some of the services funding from 1590 towards behavioral health services, which has been really exciting. So that happened a couple months back now. The RFP has been released and all. And then more recently, for the capital side of the house for 1590, we're also in this last sort of study session we had, council also prioritized serving our underserved populations, which to me also can encompass folks that do have behavioral health disabilities as well. So that's been really exciting as well. So that RFP is out. So we'll see what happens with those projects that are incoming and seeing if they address some of the same folks that you spoke about tonight. And about the metrics piece of things. So I agree. We need to understand the actual magnitude of the problem, because to be quite honest, the 1,032 in the point in time count, we know is an undercount and an underrepresentation of the amount of folks that are living outside and in vehicles, whether it's folks accessing our shelter system or folks literally living outside. And so part of that being, part of me trying to understand the magnitude and collect some of that data and get some of those numbers was the reason as to why I wanted to create a streamlined approach for folks to request support and assistance through My Bellevue so we can get that count. Because otherwise, when we don't have like a streamlined way to collect that data, it's kind of all over the place. So it's been exciting to say, all right, folks, please, direct your questions towards homelessness related issues, which are often sometimes, issues regarding specific encampments to help with the counts in those numbers. I know that once we start exploring the safe parking program option 2, we'll probably do another vehicle residency count just to see the magnitude of that issue as well throughout the city. And part of the data that I collect, I didn't really highlight it too much, but I do count the number of folks that are engaged with me in services, which definitely does not count everybody that is experiencing homelessness, but that number also provides a snapshot of how many folks are experiencing homelessness and engaging with the program as well.
Okay, thanks. Do you have off the top of your head how many people are living, I'm not talking about cars, how many people are living in Bellevue in tents, and also how many people you are currently working with to get them from homelessness to housed and served?
Yeah. So that unduplicated number for 2020 was 101 that were accessing services with me and engaging. As of right now, I think I had, let me see, about 67 on this slide itself, but it has definitely grown since the time that I created this slide to probably about closer to 80 at this point for unduplicated folks that have been, accessing and participating in my program.
Okay.
But we can also provide more of a robust number too, once we look at the numbers from my Bellevue and those other metrics that I mentioned that are soon to come too, counting vehicle residencies and everything.
Thank you. I'd be very interested in those.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for all the work that you do. I was just thinking about just how much coordination it does take both within the city departments as well as regionally. And I really like what you said about how you're working with our neighboring cities so that as people may be moving around to get services, that we share information and really help each other. And I really agree about the point and count being undercounted. Having participated twice between 2 and 6 in the morning in January, trying to find where tents might be is really, really tough. And so being able to collect data from the community of if they notice a tent, being able to then reach out and figure out what they need. I really, really appreciate that. So for me, I really want to understand more about then what are the kind of resources you need to be able to do the work that you do. It seems to me there's only one of you, and what I'm hearing is there's more and more people that you're creating that relationship with so that they can get the help that you're helping them with. And so really understanding more of that. The enhanced communication, I think, is so key. And I think in addition to that, it's also managing expectations. So earlier when you talked about, the 24-hour parking, right? We want to make sure that we are also clear with our community about when a vehicle is a dwelling, what we're legally allowed to do or not do related to that ordinance. And so I think that's an important part. And the parking one is something that I'm very, very interested in. I'm so glad my colleagues were interested in having that as our work plan. There actually is a safe parking program, and it's at a church actually right next to my house. And I don't think they have very many cars in there right now. They're helping women. And I would definitely be interested in us accelerating that effort as much as possible. I've got to tell you that I was at a Sophia Way helping bring meals one time a couple years ago, and just happened to be sitting at a table with 2 women who were telling me how grateful they were that they were actually in a safe parking program up in Kirkland because they were trying to finish their degree up at Bellevue College. And what they said to me was, I'm so grateful I actually have a car to sleep in, so I'm not actually sleeping out in the street. And it is just amazingly hard work here. And the more we can move faster in this work, the more people that we can help. And then the other part of it is what you also brought up about, so once we provide the help that they need, do we have enough either temporary housing or permanent housing for people to go to? So as we learn more about this, definitely want to make sure that if we need to leverage more of that 1590 money to bond against the revenue, to have the funds to move faster with either behavioral mental health services or housing, that we do that as much as we can. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Zahn, I'll jump in a little bit on the resource question there. So there, as you pointed out, Stephanie does yeoman's work in adding this position a few years ago. One of the things that we saw was the opportunity to leverage some programs that existed across multiple departments and make sure we're sort of rowing the boat in the same direction. So she's done a really good job of that. I do think it's one of those programs that has a growing need, something of a I hesitate to say limitless need, but a growing need, as do many of our programs around the city. So one step that we've taken in the manager's office is to authorize some more on the ground assistance for Stephanie. Particularly, you're seeing her more on the policy front. She's working with the 1590 team. And then as that wraps up, she's really going to be one of our lead people working on some policy choices around safe parking. So we have authorized some backfilling for her just to make sure we're maintaining our outreach service levels. And I think really when we get into then what does safe parking look like for the city, and what do some other things coming out of KCRHA, the regional effort, what do those things look like, should feed right into your next budget process and understand where you're going to face demands across many of the city services, but we should be well positioned to help the council understand the magnitude of the need, where the region is going with respect to policies and programs that fill a lot of the gaps that you were just talking about, particularly with respect to stable housing and the services that help people stay stable. So that should be a conversation that I would expect to have more in the biennial budget process. Knowing that we're backfilling for some of the things that we're drawing on Stephanie for now. Just appreciate your comments then on the 24-hour parking, particularly with what folks can expect as we apply that 24-hour parking ordinance citywide. In the event that we do find a vehicle that looks like someone is living in it, as you pointed out, the legal landscape has changed during the course of the pandemic. So we are currently updating our operating procedures with respect to vehicle residencies in particular. We do share your interest that once we get those clear, that we can clearly communicate with people about what that will look like and what to expect. They're both practical and legal challenges with that. So we want to make sure everybody understands what that enforcement might look like. So I just wanted to tackle those two things. Stephanie, I don't know if I missed anything from Councilmember Zahn's questions, so.
No, I think just to add to the, managing expectations and advancing and enhancing that communication, that's also why we've taken the approach to update the city homelessness in Bellevue website as well, to just highlight what our protocols are and, at a very high level, what we do to address when we have folks living in their vehicles or we see an encampment, and making sure that folks just know what our protocols and processes are citywide.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council Deputy Mayor Noonhouse.
Thank you, Mayor. Great conversations and great questions here so far. I think it's been very instructive, and Stephanie, I'll pile on and say great work all around. I mean, on the presentation, but just the work you do on a daily basis. And I think your presentation really highlighted the complexity around this issue as well, as it rightly should, because there's no one path for every individual. It's very different based on what they might be experiencing at that time. So thank you for so clearly showing that in your presentation and the gaps and challenges there. Absolutely. I think Councilmember Robertson makes a very good point then, and I would be absolutely in favor of adding some additional monies if needed in order to get a really strong understanding of the homelessness picture in Bellevue. I think if we don't have that data, it's really hard for us to create a more robust protocols and processes to enable you and a bigger and greater team to give you, as I'm hearing tonight as well. And I think we would all agree, want to give you more tools and more resources in order to further address homelessness in Bellevue. I think we're all committed to that. And on top of that, I'm glad that the conversation around the safe parking program, that is critical for us, and obviously it's a priority. It came up during our retreat, and City Manager Miyake, I don't know if there's any way we can expedite that, and certainly we can wait to another budget conversation, but this is a need that we have right now affecting lives, and it'd be great if this would be something that we could expedite even quicker, even though there appears to be some safe parking programs out there already and other cities have them. And Stephanie, my first question, are we able to take advantage of those right now? Are we able to direct people who need that safe parking facility? Can we direct them right now? And are people taking advantage of it? And do they have enough space? It sounded as if they do potentially, but can you answer that one question for me, please?
So we do, and I do refer folks to safe parking programs. I will say there are limited, if not but one, safe parking program for single men on the east side. And so that's been a large issue as well, is folks and parking programs accepting women and children or families, but we do need to support our single men that are also living in our vehicles as well. But yes, we do refer folks to safe parking programs when I'm engaging with them throughout Bellevue.
And Mr. Miyake, did you want to say something or address something that I said? Sorry, it looked like you were about to say something.
Oh, no, I was, you know, in terms of the safe parking program, I know one of the things that we are working on is as Deputy City Manager Kate mentioned, that you know, Stephanie is working on a lot of the 1590 work. Part of what we're planning to do is, once some of that is completed, is to focus our attention on the safe parking program, which we're hopefully will be, you know, launch into sometime before the end of the year, which is not too from now, as you mentioned.
Great. And then my last comment / question is that certainly as a council, we understand we've gotten a lot of emails and calls about the Silver Cloud Inn acquisition by King County in relation to the city of Redmond. Now, clearly that's, you know, technically not within the city of Bellevue boundary, but there, you know, some residents have obviously pointed out that they live very close to that facility or to that hotel that will be transitioned into permanent supportive housing. Is there an update? Maybe I believe that Deputy City Manager Kate Behrens, I think you've been involved in some of those conversations with King County and the city of Redmond. For those individuals that are concerned about that issue or have questions about that, is there any update that you could provide?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that real quickly. As you mentioned, the Silver Cloud Hotel was purchased by King County through their Health Through Housing program, part of their announced plan to buy distressed hotel properties and turn them into permanent supportive housing throughout the county. I believe at this point they're up to 8 or 9 purchases throughout the county. Redmond, the Redmond Silver Cloud being the one on what you'd call the East Side subregion, several in Seattle, a couple in the South region as well. So I attended a forum that the county put on earlier or late last week and got a few details. At this point, they're anticipating 144 units of permanent supportive housing. So as Stephanie talked about today, that would be housing at the very low income level. So to qualify to be a resident in the project, you need to be in that 0 to 30% income level, in addition to other qualifying conditions, including a disability or a disabling condition. So someone who is in need of both some significant financial support, but also service support. What the county was very clear on is having decided that they have purchased the property, that it will be part of their permanent supportive housing program. What they haven't yet finalized is their request for proposals for an operator of the property. So they are committed to allowing resident and citizen participation in shaping that RFP along the lines of things like what would success look like for that project to fit well in the neighborhood, to be a good neighbor, what would be communication channels, what are things around the neighborhood that should be, that the operator and residents should be aware of, things along those lines that residents can influence. And the county was very quick to say that offer extends not only to Redmond residents, but Bellevue residents, acknowledging how close it is to Bellevue's borders. In addition, we are committing to make that project successful. It is close to our borders. It is serving a need that we see in the region. As Stephanie talked about, we do refer people to facilities sort of all over the region, and we do have a need for this kind of project. And to that end, we need it to be successful. And so we are at the staff level, coordinating with Redmond and King County with our expertise, making ourselves available to answer questions, to provide information about what we know about our own needs in Bellevue. The county did make clear that the folks being served by that project would draw first from the immediate area, so the east side, Redmond, Bellevue, and at least one county council member is committed to getting that number very high. So we'll continue to follow up on that. We would appreciate that sort of local focus when it comes to the operator finding residents to fill the units. So as people email you, council members, we are making them aware of what we know about the project, and we are providing them links to the county and Redmond websites, as those are the two agencies with official decision-making authority. But we are continuing to coordinate on the staff level, and we'll keep monitoring the project as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, great update, thank you.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, really great discussion so far. Stephanie, really is amazing work, and we're asking you to do an awful lot. And my, I guess, concern of this is we're getting a lot of information. It's really exciting to get all this pulled together and talk about it, but we are still, we're still at the baby steps in a sense. And my concern is that we're making progress and we're doing a lot of things, but we've been talking progress and doing a lot of things for a long time. And I'm hoping that what you're putting together and kind of the mix of this and pushing it will really get us kind of off the sideline in a sense and really making progress in this. We've been talking about this for decades, and a lot of the same figures that we're talking about tonight is the same figures we've had. And the one thing we haven't talked about as much is what are the values of getting people off the street and not being homeless. It's for the individuals, but and we go at it, and the problem is we're attacking it once the people are homeless, and that's a real problem. And we keep, so there's 100 people, 80 people out there that we're working with. The numbers show 5,000 or more people at 30% AMI. And that's average monthly income. I mean, they're not going to stay in homes, and they're going to be homeless. And as was noted earlier, they're not all coming in because they have mental or substance problems. They generally, that's something that's exacerbated by being homeless. And I think it'd freak all of us out if we were in that same circumstance. I guess what I'm hoping is, and what I think you're really getting us to focus on and putting something out there that is, I think, going to change this, is that our conversations are always kind of about, well, why do we have to do this? What are the problems? How can we do it? And we thank you very much for all the work you've done. And then we go into other things. We have the opportunity with the 1590 money and with our own funding and others, and the business community is behind this. I think we have the possibility to do something that will make what we're doing right now seem like a really great thing, but it's a precursor of actually resolving an issue. It's great fun to work on an issue and see progress made. What I really like to do is actually have over the goal line, and we're not there yet. And I think that's going to take a lot more emphasis on our part, and actually working with the community, working with the Silver Cloud people. They're involved in that, working with the other cities. And, in some ways, Kirkland and Redmond are ahead of us in some of these areas. But I'm hoping that we're just putting steps in place that will lead us to something else, not just doing pretty good and coming back with something and saying, well, we helped so many people, but the problem continues. And I don't think maybe we're not putting enough resources in the work that you're doing. We're kind of talking about this. What else do we need? How can we do it? I just want to see us come out of this with the opportunity, with the funding we have, possibly with the attitudes we have in a lot of people. It's been exhilarating to see not only, and we're, concerned seeing the people who come on and some pretty awful comments about how terrible these people are. We want to help them, but we don't want them in our neighborhood, kind of thing. And I hope those people who are doing that can understand this and get them working together. But I really think I'd like to see us utilize the number of people in this city who have come forward and said, we want to help, we want to make it different. How do we do that? How do we get the community to really come together and say, this isn't an issue. We're not fighting about who's going to get to walk down the trail. We're fighting about how people are going to, individuals and human beings are going to survive, and how are we going to not have a homeless problem? And so I think we're making great strides on it, but I'm just hoping this is a precursor of something that is really going to be good. And we have the opportunities there, but if we keep arguing about the same old things we've been arguing about for years, we're not going to get there. So just really appreciate the work you're doing, and I hope we'll come back and at some time and say, we only have 5 people who are homeless because we've gotten them off. And the other problem is these people are homeless, and it's always some new people coming in. And so we can get the 100 and something people in homes, but in the meantime, there are going to be another 100 or more homeless people. So it's got to be all integrated. And I think that's something you're working on too, and the work you're doing is going to help us get there. So it's very much appreciated. But it's a great presentation, and I hope we as a council and a city can live up to the promise that you're putting out there for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say really quickly too, I appreciate your sentiments on the topic too, and which is why on the slide that I had around proactive and reactive homelessness responses, that's exactly, you hit it right on the nail. That's exactly what I'm trying to talk about, and make sure that we as a city know that this continues to be a challenge. You know, we have great staff, not only myself, but the fire repairs team. We have highly trained officers as well in the Bellevue Police Department that have some good training around de-escalation, crisis management, trauma-informed services, so on and so forth, that have really built good rapport with our unhoused community. And we continue to really do good crisis management, right? Addressing the immediate visibility of homelessness. And now is the time to sort of continue to invest in those proactive and preventative responses to homelessness that I'm hearing that you're touching upon. So thank you. Appreciate your sentiments.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Stephanie, you're amazing. My hat and my heart goes out to you. How many Stephanies are there working? How many have you cloned? You know, this is amazing work, an amazing amount of work, amazing, you know, touching you're having with folks one at a time. And, you know, it sounds like a small number, 101, you know, but you ever try to handle the challenge, the problem that you're facing to take care of any one of those folks? I don't know how many days of the hour you have, how many days in the week you've got. And I'm sure that you do not have time to enjoy your Labor Day weekend. I know that, you know, we have the church, we're taking care of some of the homeless folks, you know, from CHFL. And, you know, they're working, you're working. And it's just one little bit. So I can understand, you know, how much you have to do. I'm even amazed. The half an hour you spend it with us, it's taking you away from all these people you're helping out. You know, I mean, if out of your real conscience, you probably say, why do I have to waste my time to talk to a bunch of politicians? You can do a lot more work out there, but there's only one. You know, I don't see how you do it. And I think that's why we pointed out to the reality you're facing. So I want to compliment you. And you know, again, my heart goes out to you. You know, I think what I recommend you can do to make a difference is you got to focus on a few things, because this problem, the solution has to come from the community, from people. And you have great staff. You know, we've got great, you mentioned great fire, great police. Every one of you talk to lots of them, community, you know, development. but they have a lot of other stuff to do. And you have to manage. How do you have time to manage, to plan, to develop a safe parking program where you have to be out there, somebody's calling you? I mean, you got your earphone, you got a cell phone in your pocket. Somebody will be calling you and you got to respond. And that's where the proactiveness comes in. That's important. That's why the reactiveness that we are doing now, and that's not efficient. That's not effective, right? You fix one problem, 5 of them are waiting out for you. And so you got to get on top of things, proactive. And I think that's why we are willing to work with you, to give you resources. We are, as long as you have time to come to tell us what you can do effectively and focus on things. You actually can do 5 and only get 4. So you're making 1 better each time. If you only do 1 and get 2 more, we're not getting there. And so, you have your support, but the support means you have to focus on a few things. And the few things I think the councilman already suggested to you, some of the things that we are very involved with, interesting. The community is really involved with, interested in. We heard somebody talking to us this evening. This is something they are concerned about. And the safe parking obviously is one. And so there are a number of things. So we got to figure out which one can we tackle first, and not to just do everything. You never catch up. There's only one of you, okay? Unless we all volunteer to do whatever you do and give us a shot and we'll do what you do, but hey, that's not reality. So I really hope that you hear the message we have, focus, get resources, tell us what you need. And how council members, we spend so much of your time trying to make one small decision. Why, you can't afford that. You gotta be able to say, this is what I need, and this is what we can make a change. And we actually make a difference. And we cannot just, dilly-dally around, say, okay, we gotta make it happen. We gotta make more Stephanies out there. And so one thing I want to point it out, being proactive and being reactive, being prevention and being look at, we talk about a few things. Underserved population, we always give you we always give you ideas. That's not, no matter how much you do, somehow we're going to throw an idea and slow you down, okay? So, but one idea that's been mentioned, you mentioned it. Yeah, so I think one thing I noticed under-deserved population, I'm really glad the city's focusing on it, but don't let that distract from you, but it is important. And you need to work on that, and some of us feel it's important because it takes the community to fix the problem. And this underserved population, like one of the things I noticed, the number, Asian American, 1%. I know how many percent Asian Americans, but only a very small percentage are the homeless populations. So sounds like, well, we don't need to worry about that. But I think there are 2 things we probably can learn from that. One is, why can we learn? Why are they not homeless? What do they do? What lesson can we learn? Because that's part of the proactive solution we may be able to consider to use in our overall homeless program. I don't know. I'm just saying it by looking at the numbers. Second, I think we can prevent. If we don't pay attention to them, if we don't do anything, if they have 12% population, now they only have 1% problem. Eventually, the 12% population can become 20% of the problem, if we don't pay attention to them. And I think the way to pay attention is really to bring attention, learn from them, how they can do it, encourage them to do it right, and get them involved, get them into, as part of the solution.
Thank you, Councilman Lee.
Future. Okay. Hopefully not, but maybe problems. So I just pointed out and whether you can do it or not, that's a separate matter. But I just wanted, since I noticed it, I want to bring to your attention. Other than that, I think, everybody said a lot of stuff, but my emphasis is really, we need to have the community behind you, because whatever resource we give depends on how much community, is willing to give it, support us. And I think they will support us by listening to, and watching you and make.
Are you still there?
Okay, somehow I lost my internet, but I'm finishing. I'm finishing up. So I just want to emphasize that we need to address the community's real important issue and focus. And if we can get this support on board, they will support us. And with your enthusiasm, your ability, and I'm sure they will be impressed that you can make things happen. If you do, we will support you. Thank you. Well done. Good job.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, well, you've heard a lot of comments, and I think there's a consistency in the safe parking program, and also collecting the data and getting some. I know it's a regional problem, and I know we're working regionally, but we still would like to see some of the Bellevue numbers. And to Councilmember Stokes' point, I would like to know what success is. How do we define success so that we can actually aim for that? So that's something I'd like to hear. But I'll tell you, only 10% of our housing in Bellevue is affordable to a family of four earning under $80,000 a year. Only 10% of all the housing we have available in Bellevue is affordable to that. So we don't have a lot of housing to choose from. And if you look at the King County data, you'll see that a lot of people who can afford more spend less on housing so that they can save more money, which is perfectly fair, but they're taking up some of the very few affordable homes that we have that are naturally affordable. And so it's really a challenge to live in Bellevue. And we have people who come here because they want their kids to have a good education, and they're working multiple jobs, and they're trying to find that place where they can afford to live. And when something happens, they don't have a safety net. We have got to have more housing in the entire spectrum from 0 to 80% AMI, so that we have more options for people who are working up the affordable ladder and we're falling down the affordable ladder. It shouldn't just be that you go homeless. There should be some more options available to people. And I think that's what the staff and you are all working really hard to do for our city, is to create more opportunities for different affordability in housing. And I'm all for that. But I would like to ask you, I'm also going to say that in my experience and the work I've done and the research I've read, it's just, kids who are not stably housed cannot learn. They do not meet their academic milestones. And you see that in the Bellevue School District, you see that nationally. So that underscores to me the real need to get those families into stable housing. But also from my work with the Mental Illness Drug Dependency Oversight Committee, you see over the years that these individuals who go into programs who are homeless, they don't have any success, especially no permanent success, if they're not stably housed first. So if we want to see people get better, we want to see people get back on their feet, we have to put them in stable housing. Having said that, I wanted to ask you, Stephanie, it's my understanding that if somebody loses their housing and is in their car and we get them back into housing rapidly, it's a much less of a traumatic moment for that person or that family than it is to end up outside, sleeping outside. And that people who end up outside have to make these major adjustments mentally. And then it's very hard to get them back inside. Am I right about that?
You are correct. Yes, you hit the nail on that one. So, and I will say, even for the folks that I have supported in housing, whether, temporarily in transitional housing or permanent housing, it still takes quite a lot of case management and support to keep those folks in housing. So I still talk to the majority of folks that I've housed because new issues arise or new challenges arise from just living back inside, especially for folks that have been chronically homeless, living outside with mental health disabilities or living outside for 5 to 10 years, life skills, sort of how to engage with your landlord, new issues in terms of the reality of, okay, now that I don't have to survive day to day and I don't have to worry about where I'm sleeping, now I'm actually can address the need for counseling and employment and my behavioral health, which is very scary for a lot of my clients that never had, that kind of put those emotions aside. So it's been definitely an experience, like supporting folks moving inside, but then helping to maintain folks. That's a whole other part of the job too, that I didn't mention. That still needs to happen. And that's why the supportive services and connection with housing is so key to the success of folks maintaining their housing, and I'll say the right amount of staff capacity at these housing complexes, in terms of making sure that we have enough staff there to provide case management and support is key to keep people housed, because that's when your case managers can say, okay, we have this new problem, let's figure this out, so that you're not moving back outside. I've had several folks, call, text, forget it, I'm just going to go back outside. I'd forget it. And I'm like, no, let's figure this out. Let's figure out what those issues are. And so it does take a whole other sort of level of case management to just help folks stay inside. So yes, and also the mental health and substance use and medical issues that I've seen from folks living outside on the streets for years, and even talking with officers who've known our homeless folks that have, just entered into homelessness or our homelessness system, years down the line, the deterioration from not receiving medical treatment, not receiving the support they need, living outside, and like the mental health, substance use, and medical needs, all of that is a byproduct of also living outside. And I know Councilmember Stokes had mentioned that, as well as just living outside exacerbating these issues.
Well, the lifespan of somebody who lives outside is incredibly shortened. So, yes. Well, you characterize that very well. Thank you for taking the time to describe the struggle and the challenge that we as a community have to support these individuals. I think you hear strong support from the council that we want to do what needs to be done to help them. And so I hope that we have a path and that we can look at what's the budget going to be to do what we need to do, and where can we get the funding from, which pool of money that we have access to, and what does success look like, and how do we get there? Because to me, there's two problems. One is preventing homelessness, and the other is fixing homelessness. And they're two completely different issues. And so it's a complex problem, but I really see the value of these safe parking areas, because those are people who don't end up outside, who maybe are more interested in being rapidly housed than some of the other people. And I think you should really focus on that. That seems like lower hanging fruit, in my opinion. So I think I've heard support from each council member here talking about that program. So I'd like to see if there's a way to bring that back to us sooner than later. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to, just so we don't leave on a note of feeling like Stephanie and this homelessness outreach program is marching off to solve homelessness. I wanted to just remind council or reiterate a couple things, and maybe put this in bigger picture framework. So I think many of the council members pointed out issues with the macro scale. So where are the investments that we need on housing units from the whole spectrum of subsidy and affordability? And there is a lot of work both in Bellevue and regionally on trying to address that scale, that spectrum, and filling out the gaps in that spectrum. So that's kind of a macro system that we're working on, that you're investing in through policy work and through capital investments. There's the macro system of the mental health and behavioral health and prevention services, things that can either prevent homelessness or help people get back to stability on the service side of things. And that is also a macro system. There's a whole, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority is part of that umbrella system to help us understand that network of services, what it looks like now and where the gaps and overlaps are. Locally, the council has a long history through the Human Services Fund in investing in some of those in Bellevue and kind of sub-regionally on the east side. You also took the 1590 money and are now doing strategic planning to figure out where does that actually fit for Bellevue in bringing those two macro systems together, the capital and the services. So those are two trajectories that are out there that we're also addressing this big system and how we can prevent or rapidly rehouse people that become homeless. When we did the 2017 initiative with the council, really looking at the bigger system and then how it was playing out on the ground in Bellevue, we saw the value of bringing in a homelessness outreach coordinator who worked specifically for the city of Bellevue, more on the micro front. So knowing what's happening in the macro and knowing where we're investing in services and where there may be case managers and where there's gaps, we saw a lot of value in bringing in a specialist to the city of Bellevue who could get to know what was happening in our community and help us with an even more refined understanding of where the needs are, really who is the community in Bellevue that is homelessness, that needs to get plugged back into the system, and how can we do that effectively. At the time we heard, and the council all heard from Congregations for the Homeless, for example, that it takes repeated 60, 70, 75 contacts with someone before they feel the level of trust they need to want to plug back into the system. And so we wanted somebody doing that on behalf of Bellevue. And I would say good point about how we measure success for that program versus the macro program. And we'll definitely give some more thought to that. But one thing that I would call a success story for us having that better refined understanding of what's really happening on the ground in Bellevue is the safe parking program. Back in 2017, when we sort of comprehensively looked at what was happening in Bellevue and what we needed to respond, I would say we didn't have a very refined understanding of really how many people are living in vehicles and what is that experience like, and what is the thing that we need to do to support that a particular population. And now with Stephanie out there doing that kind of outreach, I think we do understand a pretty significant gap locally within Bellevue outside of that macro scale that lets us know that could play a role in responding, particularly in our community, and that it's time is now to come back to the council with some options for that. And I don't know that we would have gotten to that place without having more of a boots on the ground person out there telling us what was really happening with respect to vehicle residencies. So I would just leave the council with that example, and definitely heard you all about the interest in picking that up, and we'll be figuring out how to transition Stephanie to that as some of the 1590 work, gets to a place where the team can work that through and finalize some of the council decisions, and then move to safe parking. And we'll continue to try to find ways to support Stephanie in what she's doing.
Well, that sounds good. We appreciate it very much. Okay, let's go ahead and take a break. It's 7:44 or 7:45. Meet you at 7:55. We have one more study session item. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce that, please? Can't hear you yet. Mr. Miyake, I think your mic's off.
Yes, it was. Getting back into the groove of things after the summer break, I guess. So, yeah. So, hey, thanks, Mayor and Council members. The next topic is your quarterly update. This is for the second quarterly economic development update. It's for the second quarter of 2021. As council is aware, you receive these quarterly updates periodically. The last one that you received was back on May 24th of 2021. With that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it right over to Jesse Canedo, our Chief Economic Development Officer, and joining him is Philly Marsh, the Economic Development Manager, both from the Community Development Department. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jesse.
Thank you, City Manager Miyake. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, we're looking forward to tonight's presentation. A couple of quick notes. As the City Manager mentioned, we are presenting on mid-year numbers, so Q2 numbers. So we all know many things have changed in the last 5 or 6 weeks with the arrival of the Delta variant and other particular public health concerns. So there may be a little bit of a disconnect between what we're talking about tonight and what we're experiencing presently. So these are mid-year numbers, but I'll say we'll also be back in about 5 weeks with another update that will include the current trends and numbers as the economy continues to adjust. Now, just as a highlight on where we were at mid-year, we still did have that tale of two cities effect where we had the strong technology side growth and some of our small businesses continuing to struggle. But things were much more in a positive direction as the economy was reopening, people were returning to the office and visitors were returning to the city. And now as federally funded support programs are continuing to roll out and support our local businesses, we're continuing to support them and accessing those funds. So lots of good to continue talking about, some continuing challenges we're continuing to engage on. In terms of tonight is information only. We're not requesting specific direction, but I will note that one of the items we'll talk about tonight, the tourism promotion area, is an area where we will need future direction and action by the council, and we'll cover that one later. With that, I will hand it over to Philly.
Thank you, Jesse. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, and City Manager. Just as a quick reminder, the Cultural and Economic Development Division, we manage the ongoing efforts of business attraction and marketing, business retention and expansion, as well as the public art program. We also advance the 6 new focus areas of the Economic Development Plan. Our last quarterly presentation focused on recovery, small business assistance, and workforce. And tonight we will continue a snapshot of economic recovery, but go into some of our growth trends and share how we're leveraging partnerships for that sustained recovery and growth. As Jesse alluded to, these are Q2 numbers. We don't yet have the close of Q3 yet for these KPIs, but recovery is continuing on a positive track. Unemployment remains stable, and we're currently watching that on an industry level to see the dynamics between industries. Commercial real estate did see a slight increase in vacancy, but some of the announced large leases that were at the end of Q2 were not yet recorded. So we're optimistic that Q3 numbers will be positive. And our biggest area of recovery is in our hotel occupancy. While still notably down from a year ago, it's really starting to see that exponential growth, and the daily hotel rates have also increased along with that occupancy. And then last but certainly not least, we're starting to see that healthy rebound in small business establishments that we were anticipating and hope for after an economic downturn. However, with the continuation of the waves of these pandemics, it's still important to work with our partners for aligned and accelerated recovery, and making sure that that recovery is equitable as well. So we work with many organizations and efforts to coordinate and leverage the economies of scale for the benefit of Bellevue businesses and residents. Mayor Robinson, as well as Councilmember Lee, participated on task forces that were led by Greater Seattle Partners to develop an equitable and inclusive regional economic recovery framework. This Partners for Prosperity plan reflects the contributions of 200 leaders from diverse backgrounds across public, private, and community organizations. We've continued to stay involved with the 10 signature initiatives that were selected for the development of implementation plans. These plans are expected to be announced at a meeting mid-month in September. So we'll have more information on those details of how these rollouts will occur at a future meeting. But in alignment with this Partners for Prosperity plan, we're working with many partners, including the Port of Seattle, the King County ADO, the Workforce Development Council, One East Side for All, as well as our local partners to ensure that inclusive and coordinated planning and implementation for recovery, as well as growth. One upcoming program that I wanted to make sure to mention was the Startup 425 Boost Your Digital Marketing Workshop. This is a great free opportunity that takes place on September 25th for small businesses to start or enhance their digital presence. What we did learn through the pandemic was those businesses who lacked that digital presence really struggled the most. So this is a great opportunity for those looking to explore kind of at the entry level to help enhance that. We have diverse business owners, including Louis Rudd from Azel's Famous Chicken and Brandon Ting from Kazuki Ramen, to kind of share their stories of how they were able to pivot and leverage their digital presence through the pandemic to really help inspire others. And we're working to promote this opportunity to diverse businesses through our network of trusted messengers. And so far, registrations are 50% minority owned and over 60% women owned. So we're really hopeful to get a large participation rate of this. And then we will be repeating this event a few more times into the fall and early 2022 to build upon the success of it. Another effort that we're working on is where CED staff in Bellevue is leading conversations in the region to explore low-cost loan options, including options like leveraging the Washington Flex Fund. And this can serve traditionally underbanked women and minority-owned businesses and nonprofits because it has low interest and as well as the no collateral requirements, which is really important for that equitable and sustained recovery. So there may be more to come on that in the future as well. But one thing we did want to dive into was our small business rent relief. Bellevue staff led a study to understand the extent of the commercial leases arrears on the east side, as well as its impacts for the ability to small businesses to recover and expand. And what we learned from the study were that the leases were concentrated in certain sectors, mostly those sectors that did not have other forms of relief assistance. So these sectors included health and wellness, the personal service sector, and the survey found that 3/4 of small businesses found it difficult or very difficult to afford their commercial rent. Many did receive some form of landlord relief, but they also have been taking on a higher debt load, with over half saying that they had a debt load of 25% or more than the year prior. So the conclusion of this study was that certain sectors would definitely benefit from continued relief to help foster that recovery as well as accelerate that growth that we also want to see. So based on that conclusion, we recommended, and thank you, Council, for authorizing $500,000 of the Bellevue's Federal American Rescue Plan, the ARPA funding, to be able to provide small Bellevue-owned businesses and art organizations with grants ranging from $2,500 to $15,000 in rental relief. We are working to develop this program. We're expecting a launch date of September 20th. The application and grant information will be translated into the top languages, and we'll continue to work with our community-based organizations to ensure the information is delivered equitably to all of our businesses. And then grants awards will be randomly selected through a lottery system with priority given to those businesses hardest hit and most in need. While there's still a lot of work in recovery that is taking place, we also want to highlight that our tech industry continues to remain strong and it's growing. Bellevue's reputation as a global tech hub strengthens by the day with new funding and acquisition and companies that are choosing to establish their engineering outposts here in Bellevue. our monthly cultural and economic development newsletter. Within it, we highlight the exciting news of our Bellevue-based companies, as well as highlight the newest companies and businesses that choose to locate here in Bellevue. And if you don't subscribe to that, here's just a shameless plug to subscribe to our monthly newsletter. It really does include that, as well as all of the latest resources we have available for our small businesses, as well as workforce programs. So really some great information that we try to include in that. But earlier this year, it was announced that Chewy.com, which is an online pet supply company that's based out of Florida, was searching for a Seattle engineering outpost to employ several hundred jobs. And recently they've announced Bellevue as their West Coast engineering outpost, and they are currently hiring for those jobs. So we're excited to see that. And then we've also seen a lot of recent activity in the gaming industry. Epic Games had a small presence that is now expanding. Timmy, which is another video game studio, is opening in Bellevue. And just last week, Probably Monsters, which is a smaller video game company headquartered in Bellevue, it was just announced that they received $200 million in Series A financial round. So we're really seeing investment across all level of our gaming industry and growth there. So we continue to foster that industry. We've recently been conducting outreach to gaming companies to see how we can further showcase and support Bellevue's digital and interactive successes and presence here in Bellevue. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse for the next few slides.
Thank you, Philly. Continuing on that theme of growth and tech, I'm happy to announce that Bellevue's reputation as a technology innovation hub continues to grow. One particular area of success has been our work with supporting the development of a local 5G innovation cluster. For context, in 2019, the city worked with a private group of local industry experts to help stand up an innovation partnership, and helped the group apply for a state designation as an innovation partnership zone to help accelerate the growth of 5G startups in our area. And all of Bellevue should be very proud that that innovation partnership zone is the best example in the state of an innovation partnership zone, and probably the most successful one to date. In the 2 years since that partnership launched, we have seen a lot of uptake in their offerings. So that partnership now is in our third cohort of startups coming in to help get acceleration and mentorship. There are over 30 corporate partners, including locally T-Mobile, Microsoft, and others, and 47 global companies engaged in their lab and development to help accelerate the rollout of 5G technologies across the globe. And the system, that ecosystem, is gaining a self-sustaining gravitas of its own, with new investors, new mentors, and new startups coming in on a regular cadence. So that will help cement Bellevue as a 5G innovation center. To help reinforce that success, this fall we are helping the partnership apply for a state innovation cluster program grant, which will help provide additional resources for mentoring, investments, and other items that we'll need, that will be able to help accelerate the work of those startups and help them get to market faster. Another notable success on 5G is the partnership recently announced they will be taking physical space in the Spring District. They will be co-locating with GIX, and that location, as you know, is a fantastic option. That co-location with the Global Innovation Exchange, the fact that the T-Mobile Innovation Center is just east on Spring Boulevard, the proximity to transit, and the surrounding ecosystem of innovative technology companies will really help foster that partnership's growth and help it deliver more companies and more startups to market very quickly. So as we think about pulling all that together, the fast growth of our larger technology companies and game industry, the 5G innovation, we wanted to take a moment to highlight for Council some of the job growth projections for the coming decades. So what you're seeing on the screen is our work with the city's planning teams to help inform updates to our comprehensive plan, our work with the PSRC around regional growth and growth allocations. And based on our analysis, all things being constant, citywide employment could reach approximately 230,000 jobs by 2044. 2044 is the current planning horizon for PSRC. And again, that is 230,000 across all of Bellevue in all industries. For a rough approximation, that's about the number of jobs in current day Arlington, Virginia, which is a great analogous community for us. And so the market could support that many jobs by 2044, all things being constant. I will say that this is a broad target. There are many factors that could influence that number one way or the other in the intervening 20 years, but we did our best to discount future downturns in the market, the slowdown of US population growth, international market dynamics. With some of the other things we can't factor in are the potential long-term changes of COVID and work from home hybrid environments. But we do believe this is a solid number to base our growth and planning around. And to highlight a little bit of what Bellevue could look like and function like in 2044, the chart on the screen highlights downtown Bellevue in 2044, that's the gold bar, compared to current day Bellevue, current day downtown Bellevue, current day downtown Portland, and current day downtown Vancouver, BC. So what you'll note is that downtown Bellevue in 2044 would be slightly larger than downtown Portland is today and slightly smaller than current day downtown Vancouver on a jobs basis only. This does not factor in residents, just on a jobs basis. And when we look at how that growth will play out by the end of this decade, by let's say 2030, downtown Bellevue, all things being constant, could be larger than downtown Portland just on a jobs basis. So by 2030, 2031, downtown Bellevue may be the third largest job center in the Pacific Northwest. So the ranking would be downtown Seattle, downtown Vancouver, and then downtown Bellevue. And that helps give a little bit of understanding of what the center city might function like and how it might be received in 2044. That also helps us understand the amenities and other expectations that our future residents, workers, and visitors will have as they think about coming into the third largest downtown in the Pacific Northwest. So we are on track. We're growing well into a larger market. One note that I'll make is just one of the important supporting factors in this job growth is going to be the production of housing at all income levels in the city and across the region. As a teaser, we'll be coming back to council in November with the report on this year's biennial business survey. And one of the key takeaways from that survey, as it has been in past years, is that the availability of housing at all income levels continues to be a very big issue for our business community. They want to make sure that their workers will be able to live within a reasonable commute of their work site in the future. So that production of housing at all levels will be super important. And the growth in residents will also be a supporting factor for small businesses going forward. It is residents who tend to patronize their local pizzeria, their local dry cleaners more. And we have seen that play out in the last 18 months during the pandemic, that those businesses that have had better success or more resiliency really benefited from the residential engagement that they got in the absence of visitors and workers. So again, that production of affordable housing at all levels will be important for the city. And so when we think about job projections, the growth in jobs, and what does that all mean for the real estate sector? Next slide, please. On the screen, we've got a random sampling of some of the recent commercial transactions in the city. So these are newer buildings that have been developed and then recently sold. And what we've found and what we've heard from our broker community is that Bellevue and the East Side continues to be a safe haven for real estate investment. It continues to be a market that is drawing in investors regionally, nationally, and increasingly getting international attention as well. The high quality of tenants that are signing leases, the stability of Bellevue's environment, and the strong investment in infrastructure is really leading to a strong payoff on the real estate side, which is great. And one note, all of the job and the job growth and those strong leases that Philly mentioned earlier are really clustering along the East Link alignment, really showing the return on investment for the region in that high capacity transit line. So we expect that that alignment will continue to be a strong magnet for real estate investment going forward. And with that, I will hand it back to Philly.
Another area we're pleased to see investment in is the tourism industry organizing to invest in itself with the formation of a tourism promotion area. This effort is being led by Visit Bellevue, Washington. It's a state program that enables hotels to add a special assessment on room nights to support the tourism activity. It's exciting to note, as well as align with our ED plan, that a portion of this investment would go to support the development of a tourism event and festival incubator program. To establish a TPA, a petition must be presented to the legislative authority of 2 or more jurisdictions under an interlocal agreement, and Visit Bellevue has identified the City of Redmond as the partnering jurisdiction along with the City of Bellevue. Visit Bellevue has also hired a consultant for stakeholder outreach, and after open houses and several discussions, there's strong indication of support throughout all the hotels of this formation. Staff is leading interdepartmental coordination with FAM as well as our legal team for all the necessary logistics. But the next step, it would be a petition returning to council for the formation of this TPA. And we do anticipate that to occur prior to the end of the year based on kind of the timeline and stakeholder engagement that Visit Bellevue has been conducting. So with that, that was just a snapshot of what we've been working on. There's many other projects in the works that our team will bring to council with more details in future meetings that we wanted to give you a quick teaser on. First thing is we wanted to mention that starting this Thursday is the Bellwether Arts experience, and that does take place throughout September with pandemic safe events. Many of the events and installations take place at the Bellevue Botanical Gardens as well as the Bellevue Arts Museum. And new this year, with a partnership with East Hub, there will be live music that does take place both weekends, one in Maidenbauer Center and one in Downtown Park. So the website is there. Definitely encourage everyone watching to check out the line of events and programming that takes place for this art experience here in Bellevue. It is the end of summer, unfortunately, and our al fresco dining program will conclude this month. But the good news is it will return next spring, and CED is leading an interdepartmental retrospective to understand some of the concerns and challenges and to do process improvement on it when it does return for future years. Jesse mentioned that business survey report that will be coming in November. This is the survey that we do every 2 years to understand the Bellevue's economy and feedback from businesses across sizes, industries, and geographic locations. So we'll present the findings of that to council. BDA will be launching their strategic plan here in the fall, and this is really a plan to help ensure that that the organization is positioned to best support downtown through those future years. We talked about the tourism promotion area and a petition expected to come. And then last, but certainly not least, something I'm personally very excited about is the workforce navigation program. So again, thank you to council for allocating funding for this program that's in development. And we are excited to come with more details of that program and how we can best connect our Bellevue residents to job opportunities and training and education upskilling programs in the future. So with that, again, this was information only, but we are happy to open it up for questions and comments.
Great. Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to call on Councilmember Lee, then Stokes, Deputy Mayor Noonhouse, Councilmember Zahn, Robertson, Barksdale, and then myself. So starting with Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm very, very happy about the report and indicating the work that the staff has been working on doing, that we're seeing recovery. Obviously, there will still be challenges ahead. There are a number of them. When it's GSP, just have the performer director has departed. As a result, they have an interim person, and that has a lot of experience, with the local region. So I think we're going to see a pretty smooth transition. So I think things are moving well, and they're developing strategic plan. And obviously, it's always challenging when you have so many, players involved. Also, I am on the PSRC's Economic Development District, and we're also developing policy matters for the region. And so we're working closely with GSP in terms of their strategy planning. And so GSP, as if you don't know, is the implementation of the economic activities for the region. And EDD is establishing policies that we work through the local government with the state and the local governments. And that consists primarily of Kings, Snohomish, and Pierce County, and Skagit County, and I think. And there are others, obviously, that are all interested. We've seen that there's more and more collaboration, more interest working together. And I think that's all moving in the right direction. With the pandemic, in a way, it's a bad thing. We all were, being negatively impacted by it. But at the same time, it brought to reality that we all need to be working together. And so we've developed some common goals, broadband, and we're working on the investment, credit financing, and so on. So I think there's certain synergy, and people are working together. And obviously, one of my interests is pushing for technology. So I think that is also, very uniformly supported. So I think we have a, real promising start, and especially some of the issues we're looking at is, childcare, and we're looking at housing, and all these are uniform that affect all of us. The quick key is, this way, but we actually are having local jurisdictions that are capable working on the things that we can develop as models that can help, other cities in the region can benefit, from each other's experience. And so I think Bellevue staff has been focusing on some of the issues that, the regional bodies are working on, and our emphasis, making sure that, we can use our asset ability to work on those issues with the region's help. We can be more successful, and then, others can be similarly. Welcome to this report. Obviously, it's glad that we see a recovery, but, I'm always looking for more, So when we get to after recovery, we will hopefully the numbers that Jesse pointed out, the future for Bellevue, especially as a high technology, global technology hub, is reality. I really believe it is. It's already happening even during the pandemic. Hey,
Councilmember Lee, can you wrap up, please?
Okay, so that's it. I just want to suggest that we are on a good path, and we are facing good opportunities. I won't even say it's challenge, and we need to get our acts together on all the little things that we can do well. So.
Oh, okay. I think he was finished there. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really great report. Appreciate, when you look at it, it's really well-rounded, and I think that's a key to this. I did want to comment. It's interesting that Councilmember Lee brought up the regional piece on that, and you know, Bellevue's been working on this for a long time, including the Innovation Triangle, and I worked with actually getting the Greater Seattle Economic Development piece together, and so that's a big part. But the good thing always is that, and we've progressed a lot since that time, back in 16, 17, is that Bellevue is even more a leader today than it was back then, and I think the economic development work that's been done by staff on the last 2-3 years has just been phenomenal. And I'm excited about what we're doing, how we're going forward on it. The only things I wanted to ask some questions on, I was glad to hear you mention, of course, some of the art pieces and Bellwether and East Hub's working with us on that. And I think we have a lot of other great things we're talking about that. I would like to hear a little bit more next time about, you know, the plans that we may have for getting back to the creative economy concept, which is, again, something that has been very good. We've developed and are leader in that, is more the role of arts and culture and including artist space, events, and how do we do that? How do we, when we get more and more people in, more and more people here working in, as you indicate, we will have as the city grows, we need to have places for people to want to come to Bellevue. And when they get, you know, they get off work, they might want to stay in Bellevue and go to an event or go something like that. So it's all tied together. And, you know, next time I'd like to see a little more, you know, some additional focus on that and where we're going on it. But again, I think what is really strong with the plan and how you present this, it is a comprehensive plan. It's not just focusing in one area and then kind of others are off to the side. It's an integrated, comprehensive piece that is, it's easy to understand it, but at the same time, it's just so, you know, you're just amazed that we're doing all of these things and look forward to, and as you said, this is kind of retrospective in a sense. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we, where we progress after we get through this time period. And my guess is, given all the circumstances, we're going to do pretty well. And it's because we had these plans going before, we stuck to them, we didn't do things that some other cities have done. And we've had the great fortune of having resources and people moving here. So congratulations and really appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Oh,
if I can add one note, Mayor,
yeah, please do.
Just in response to Councilmember Stokes' comments about the arts, I am also happy, I can give a preview as well, happy to note that we have hired a new arts community manager, and that's a role that's been vacant for the last 3.5 months. So there will be more progress being made on the creative economy side, and we'll have an update to Council in November on the arts in specificity.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Jesse, did you have any comments you wanted to make after Councilmember Lee, because he got frozen out at the very end there? If not, we'll move on to Deputy Mayor.
No specific comments right now, Mayor.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Jesse and Philly, thanks for the great presentation. Great little snapshot in terms of where our economy is at. Some of the things that stood out for me right away, and a few of them I'd like you to address. So the 4.3 unemployment rate, all considered, that seems quite good, and we are recovering, probably better than other cities similar size to us. I don't know if you can provide some data on how other cities regionally or nationally, those cities that we tend to compare ourselves to from time to time. Would love to know how we're comparing with them. The hotel is a concern, as anyone who saw the Wall Street Journal or I think the New York Times report on, business travel is starting to take a nosedive again, unfortunately, due to the variant. And that is a great concern, I'm sure, to all of us. So great to see this this special assessment on room nights and some other potentially state programs, but I'm not sure there's anything else that we can do to help support the hotels that we have in our city, just due to the variant and unknowns in terms of when that aspect of our economy is going to be able to recover. But certainly, I think that the vast majority of them are looking at business travel really picking up this fall, and that most likely is going away. 5G, thank you so much for that update. That is just exciting news. That they're going to be physically here in Bellevue. The number of startups and other companies are going to be coming, and apps and services are going to be coming out of that 5G innovation lab is so exciting, and I contend is going to be skyrocketing our economic development for the next 10 to 20 years. My only concern there, and it's a different department than you, is if those companies want to start rolling out their 5G services and apps, et cetera, do we have the infrastructure to provide them with that? Or are they going to have to go to a different part of the country or the world in order to roll that out? So something to keep in mind. Again, I know that's a different department than economic development, but something to keep in mind. The alfresco restaurants, absolutely would love to see an extension on this, and I know that a lot of council members have a real priority on that to help those restaurants. They're just recovering, they're just getting back on their feet. I know the alfresco program is running out soon, but every restaurateur that I talk to loves the program and loves to be able to keep offering outdoor dining, even if the weather gets a little bit colder. And then lastly, and I appreciate, I believe Councilmember Lee said it, childcare. That was an issue even before the pandemic, but even more now. I mean, I'm hearing time and time again the excruciating decisions that parents or mothers have to make between healthcare and going to work, or being able to provide housing for their family. I don't know what the answer is, but we need to come up with some different solutions for that, because our community is hurting, and especially women who too often are burdened with maintaining that the family unit and caretaking for those kids. They're losing tremendous ground that they've made in our economy and in the corporate world, and this has been highlighted in study after study of late. So this should be a real priority for us as a city. Again, difficult nut to crack, but something that I think we should all be very hypersensitive to make sure that no one gets left behind during this recovery, which clearly, even with the Delta variant, I think, we are on a V-shaped recovery, but there's going to be maybe a little bit pause getting there just due to this variant, but I'm still very hopeful and very positive that we will get there. Again, thanks for the report. Great snapshot, where I'm very interested in see what it would look like in 5 to 6 weeks. Hopefully a lot of these positive numbers hold, and those that we're concerned about will stabilize. But thank you so much for the presentation, Jesse and Philly, and anything you wanted to answer, feel free.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll address a couple of those and then ask Philly to add maybe some detail at the end. In terms of the alfresco, that we have heard loud and clear that our restaurateurs would love to extend. We will be communicating out to the restaurants, particularly those in Old Bellevue, the options that they have for extending through the winter months, including some additional guidance on outdoor heaters. We know they have a lot of questions. We do, as a matter of policy in the city, allow the outdoor heaters. We have staff will be providing some guidance to help them navigate those options in the coming weeks. So we'll do our best to help them keep their space for as much as possible. And we'll definitely be working with them for the future iterations for 2022 and beyond to see what we can improve. With regards to childcare, that is definitely something we hear loud and clear as well. In almost all of our discussions, childcare continues to be an item that pops up. I'll say that with the upcoming hiring of our workforce specialist, that is something that there will be additional bandwidth to help us stay on top of and help coordinate both Bellevue solutions, East Side solutions, and working with our regional partners like GSP, who are really seeing that as also a critical issue for an equitable recovery across all of the cities in our region. And then with terms of the hotels, we've been talking with Visit Bellevue and their leadership and others. They say that the TPA is one of the big things that we can do as a community to help provide additional funding for the marketing that's required, and for some additional seating of events that could help bring people in COVID safe ways in the coming months. So that is a key element for them. And then with regards to the unemployment rate, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Philly might have easier access than I do, but the last I saw, we were continuing to trend in the middle of the pack, maybe doing a little bit less well because of the continued pause in corporate travel, but we were continuing largely to track in the middle of the pack for unemployment. And with our peer communities also seeing a strong return. Our unemployment continues to be among the lowest of the large cities in our Puget Sound region, so we are doing comparatively better than other communities in the region. And with that, I'll offer Philly some space if there's any details she can add.
Thank you, Jesse. You answered those very well. I would just add, I think with the tourism, one thing that we did see through COVID is the tourism industry in Bellevue really lean into the leisure travel and create additional programs to boost that leisure travel. Right. And that recovery is happening at a faster pace and hopefully can help weather the continued or extension of work from home policies and business travel. And then I'll also just mention with the childcare, that was actually one of the initiatives I did participate with through the regional, and there's two ways of looking at it. There's kind of the human services way of providing one, there's the macro policies that need to be addressed, and then kind of human services with, you know, childcare subsidies. But we're actually also looking at it from the business perspective of small childcare businesses and how we can improve their business automation. So one, they feel like they can stay in business, and then with those kind of lower their cost burden and their time burden by having more automation, having kind of shared back of house solutions. So we are through Startup 425 and other programs looking at how we can do more targeted business resources and training for specifically for childcare providers.
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate that. Thanks, Jesse.
Okay, Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you, Jesse and Philly, for just a information-packed presentation of all of the things that we're doing. It's just incredible. You know, what it made me think about is inclusive economy and equitable communities. So as we think about all of the economic development and growth, how do we make sure that those that may be in lower wage jobs have opportunities to be able to be to have access to those opportunities? When we talk about the rent relief, what about the mom and pop shops, and how do we make sure that we are able to retain the ones that we have and have incubators to create new ones? Which actually brings me to the point about the aligning with those 10 elements that are in the Partners for Prosperity plan, because childcare expansion is one of those, incubator are one of those. So moving forward, will you talk about what portion of our plan we'll be doing ourselves versus in partnership? I know you've already talked about some of the partnerships. I didn't hear the one specifically so much about childcare. I'm actually wondering if we need more childcare providers, whether there's an opportunity to partner with Bellevue College as a program for those that might want to have a career in childcare or child development. So, you know, I'm kind of thinking about we weather the storm when we diversify, and it does seem as though there are some industries that we might want to lean into in addition to the 5G and the high tech, that there's the other piece that's complementary to that. And then the other part is the community-based organizations and how we help them build capacity, because I do worry about their ability to compete for the grants. So will we do more outreach and helping hand for filling out grant applications, those kinds of things? And then the other one that I wondered about is when I look at the job numbers, it looks like we're actually projecting, even on the conservative end, a higher number of jobs by 2044 than what was in the Vision 2050. Because I believe it was about 70,000 more jobs, and we're projecting 80 to 100,000 more jobs. So I'm asking because it seems like we need to accelerate even more the housing in general and affordable housing, because I feel like we're going to potentially have even more of a balance issue with jobs, but not enough housing. So those were a couple things that I've been thinking about from the standpoint of all of the amazing work you're doing, how we hold all these different pieces in the work you're doing, and where are those other partners that we may not have connected with yet, especially the ones in the BIPOC community that may not have quite the connections as others that are more established. You know, how do we make sure we're not leaving people behind is really the question that I have. Thanks.
Jesse.
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, Philly, we'll definitely need your support on some of these responses. I'll answer, I think, in reverse order, Councilmembers on. So with regards to the jobs projection, as best as I can recall, these are in alignment with the submissions we made to PSRC around regional growth. And the last numbers I recall for official job count in Bellevue said somewhere between 155, 160. So when we factor in that 70,000 jobs in growth, we do hit the 230. So I think we're in the rough ballpark. I will admit there may be a rounding error here or there, but we're in the rough ballpark. And I think the work that the city has been doing around incentivizing and accelerating the housing production is supporting that particular piece. So I'll leave that is kind of my full statement on that. With regards to grants and capacity building, we actually do have a team member in economic development who spends between a third and a half of their time working with our community partners to help them apply for grants. So that work has been something we've ramped up over the last year, and their job is to help our community partners understand the requirements in the different grant applications, make connections to different granting organizations, and help provide some support. We don't write grant applications, but we do provide some limited guidance to help them make the most successful attempt at an application as possible. And we'll be continuing that work in the next 2 to 3 years to help with that capacity building element. And that does align really well with the GSP plan and the 10 elements. I think as Philly noted, there will be a larger announcement later this month about the organizations that will be leading different elements. So one of the outcomes of that GSP planning process is that the 10 elements will each be led by a different lead organization to help distribute the load of carrying that plan forward. And so later this month, the GSP leadership will be working to announce who will be leading those, and we'll be seeing who's where we can provide alignment and support. There are places where it'll make more sense for Bellevue to play a supporting and aligned role, and others where we'll want to take a lead role either for our own community or for the East Side as a sub-region. So there will be more detail on that to come. And that will help with our equitable recovery work as well. And I'll note that with regards to equitable economies, inclusive growth, I do think that the new workforce specialists that we're hiring, as well as an additional business retention specialist that we're hiring for at the moment, those 2 roles will help expand our capacity to work with businesses in the community in an inclusive way, and make sure that they've got access to the resources and that their community partners and community-based organizations also have access to the resources. And I'll look to Philly for all the detail that I might have missed.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, I would just add that one of the regional conversations that I've been most excited about, because I think it's needed, is how do we as a region best support our community-based organizations. Many of these community-based organizations span multiple jurisdictions and counties. So what is the best mechanism to help support them so that there's been lots of conversations and ideas generated, and I believe that will be part of the rollout of the GSP or closely after that. So it's a very good question, and thank you for asking it. Your other question around, partnering with Bellevue College and how do we support our mom and pop shops and more childcare providers. I just did want to mention that through our Startup 45 programming, we actually have the Innovation Lab that is a partnership with Bellevue College and building off of the successful pilot last year of having 10 minority or women-owned businesses across industries attend this Innovation Lab, get instruction. We're iterating on that. We're building upon it, but there has been talk about how we maybe do that lab, that cohort in more focused fashion, like the child care providers. So we do really work with Bellevue College as one of our leading partners, both on the business assistance as well as the workforce through their Center for Career Connection to be able to partner and leverage and connect various resources for the community.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I mean, I think that mental and behavioral health might be another program that Bellevue College could help us with, because I don't think we have enough of those too. Thank you.
Councilmember Robertson.
Thanks. So I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments, and I'll start with the comments. First, I'd like to join my colleagues with regard to really emphasizing childcare. I think that's something we've been talking about for a while, and without childcare, women cannot succeed. Without women succeeding, families quite often cannot succeed, and it's one of the cornerstones of having a successful community. So you don't need to respond to that. I just wanted to echo those comments because I couldn't agree more. Second, on the 5G, I appreciated Deputy Mayor's comments about that. And I wanted to ask a follow-up question on how the rollout's going. And it's not necessarily something we need to talk about tonight, but I know that and I'm sure some of my colleagues would really appreciate a council update on how the rollout's going, because if we don't roll it out here, it's going to not take advantage of this great resource. Council did prioritize 5G rollout and implementation in partnership with the providers several years ago now, maybe 3 or 4, if not further. So I'd really like to get an update from the city manager's office and/or economic development on how that's going. Third, the numbers on the purchases and the investments, it just shows that Bellevue is one of the best places, I think, probably in the world to invest right now. We have a tremendous amount of momentum of people wanting to invest. And I want to echo what Councilmember Zahn said about making sure that we take advantage of, she talked about making sure that we have more housing. Now is the time to really leverage this rapid investment by making sure that we do have our land use code in place so that we can get the investments for not just the developments to serve jobs, but the development to have housing for people to live in, to work in those jobs, affordable housing as well as market rate. We need more. So just want to emphasize that. You don't need to respond to that. Fourth is the tourism promotion area. That is when I pulled up the RCW because this is the first I had heard of it. And I understand that Visit Bellevue is doing the research. That's where there's an additional fee or tax charged to every hotel room, and it can be used for various things to drive tourism. And that's going to ultimately come to council because it's going to be a council decision on whether we want to create it. I just wanted to flag that one of the things I'm going to want to know about at that time, which may not be for a while, is how the additional fee is going to affect demand. Right now, we are just starting to see some of that demand come back. The lodging tax that we already get has been dramatically impacted, and that's a very important source of revenue for tourism, as well as other, our convention center. We had to redo some bonds because we couldn't pay them in the timely manner. So I'd like, before we add another tax or another fee to hotel rooms, I'm going to want an analysis on how that will affect demand. So that's just a flag. If you have information now, that's great, or on a schedule, that's great. Finally, looking at that on that slide with all of the different sales, it looks like we might be having a little REIT windfall, real estate excise tax, for those that don't speak acronyms. So I'd like to know, are we having a REIT windfall? And whether we have any plans for that windfall. The RCWs limit what you can do with REIT money. It's primarily for capital investments, including things like parks and recreation centers, like aquatic centers. So I'm wondering if we have a forecast for the REIT money, if it's coming in above what we're originally forecasting in our budget, and whether we will be able to talk about how we want to appropriate that this year in the mid-buy. So if anyone needs me to repeat any of my questions, I'm happy to do so, but those are my comments and my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Robertson. I'll say I think a good chunk of those I'll have to defer to the city managers on those. With regards to the TPA, we'll follow up. This is definitely a organic process, with the majority of the hotels having to be in support of this before any legislation would come before the council. So with that, I'll defer those issues that relate to the city manager's office.
I'm happy to jump in on 5G at least. Councilmember Robertson, you did note that a couple of years ago, we went through an effort to try to streamline permitting, especially with respect to poles in the right-of-way owned by the city of Bellevue. So there was a master agreement and some ideas behind, I will use the phrase cookie cutter design, which may not be quite right, when small cell wireless would be installed on a city-owned light pole. We continue to work through what I'll call the first round of permitting with the providers on those poles. Lots of things to be worked out, things that have been worked out over the last 15 to 18 months on some of those streamlining ideas. Lots of things that we've learned through the process, I think both from the city side and the provider side, that could go better in the next round of permitting. Ways to try to streamline the process, minimize the kinds of documentation we're looking for. I think the work that we're working on, the task we're working on right now between staff and the providers is finding as much overlap in those lists of things we'd like to see changed, and figure out what of those need to come to the council as code amendments and what of those things are requirements on our side. I don't know that there'll be 100% alignment on where we think the opportunities for change are versus the things we think should stay in place for different reasons, whether they be sort of aesthetic or risk issues or cost issues. But we're hoping by the end of this month to have kind of that done, so we know which things we've got alignment to make change about, and then if there's anything to engage the council where we don't have alignment, we'll be updating you at that point in time. So I can assure you there has been a lot of staff time and a lot of provider time to push priority permits out the door. And I would also assure you there's probably frustration all the way around about that process, and certainly ways we can continue to push streamlining. We know that it is a council priority, and we are just trying to balance all the demands in the right of way, including aesthetic, risk, and cost issues with that priority. And probably more work to do to continue to strike the balance where we all are comfortable striking it.
Thank you for the update.
Okay, Councilmember Barksdale.
Oh, wait, can I get an answer about the REIT?
I think they said they were going to come back to you.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, we can bring it back at the mid-buy for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Just adding to the support for childcare providers, also just emphasizing making sure that they're also in the neighborhoods in addition to the business core. I think it's going to be important. In terms of the 4.4% unemployment, do we have an idea of which industries, or is it pretty distributed across industries? And then for the return to office, I mean, especially given the prevalence of tech companies and the likelihood, I guess, that there will be a hybrid approach, how are we working with the companies related to how they're returning to office, those strategies? And then I guess secondly, I think mom and pop shops will play a key role in still attracting people to Bellevue, especially if there is a hybrid mode where people may not be in Bellevue because they're maybe working from home or working from anywhere. So how are we thinking about attracting people to the city, you know, if they're able to work from anywhere? And then in terms of marketing, just an interest in making sure that we have diversity, broad diversity represented in promotional materials and marketing, whether it's our marketing or Visit Bellevue's marketing.
Thank you, Councilmember Barksdale. With regards to the unemployment rate, I think we'll follow up. So there were a couple of questions about that. We can follow up with an email with some of the details on the recent unemployment numbers so that we get accurate information to you. And then with regards to the return to the office, the delayed return to the office by our larger employers, and how might we attract additional people into the city when they're not working and not having to come into the city for work. I think that's an area where we've been working very closely with the BDA to help improve marketing particularly for downtown events and spaces, to make sure that people realize that there are great shops and restaurants in Old Bellevue, that the Bellevue collection is still very much alive and busy. And then also that is also another reason that the tourism promotion area that Visit Bellevue is working on is very important, because it is those after hours activities and events that really are going to draw individuals in to patronize our mom and pop shops and help keep our businesses very vibrant and resilient. So that combination of working with the BDA and Visit Bellevue is our work to hedge against the extended work from home period.
Got it, thank you. And just to clarify, there's also support for getting fostering more, or the development of more mom and pop shops in the city, especially just, I know rent, it looks good in terms of commercial leases, you know, relatively good, but it's kind of expensive, right, for mom and pop shops. And so just thinking about long-term strategy there so that we can have more of those mom and pop shops that will attract people who are working from anywhere in the region.
Yes, that was part of the economic development plan that the council approved in November, and we are working on that. Again, with the new hiring of our business retention specialist, that will help us get out to more businesses, learn more about the different market dynamics and needs of locally owned businesses, and probably increase our capacity to help reach out to other businesses that might be looking for a second or third location for Bellevue.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just going to kind of underscore what my fellow council members have said, which is, the Greater Seattle Partners recommendation, as you well know, Jesse and Philly, was to focus on BIPOC female-owned businesses and education and opportunity with internships, and then the childcare. So I see you doing that in your plans. And I really appreciate that. And I hope that that continues to be a focus and that we can be successful, because their recommendation came very strongly and they felt it would significantly improve the economy in this region if all the cities did that. So thank you. All right. Anything else you want to say? I think we're done here. Jesse, Philly?
Very good. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Really good discussions tonight. Appreciate it. And we will see you next week. Meeting is adjourned.